You're under arrest, accused of what? You don't know? Do you deny it? Deny what? Your guilt. What guilt? So you do deny it. What have I done? What have you done? We know what you've done. What have you done? What have you done? What have you done?
I don't know when your first encounter with Franz Kafka was. But for me, what I remember, and we've talked a little bit about this in our MTV episode, we talked about a promo that was running in the 90s, Aidan Quinn. And he was standing in a hallway, and there was a Dutch angle, so the image was not slightly off, but considerably off. And it was this long, narrow hallway that was probably exaggerated because it was built to get smaller. It's an old trick in movies. And he stood there in a black suit, and he said, as Gregor Samsa woke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a large multi-legged cockroach or something like that. That's the first time that I had ever heard of Franz Kafka. That was the Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
And I think I ran to the library and picked up the complete works or the complete short stories of Franz Kafka. The only one that I actually read was the Metamorphosis. The strange thing is, I've held Kafka in such high regard solely based on that opening sentence, or that opening few sentences. And it's a fascinating idea. Now you couple Kafka, who overruns our imagination, for those of us who remember and are literate and are aware of the importance of Franz Kafka in literature, in world literature at that. You hear, you recognize this feeling of paranoia, the state being against you, almost a psychological exaggeration of what Orwell would do in 1984. Very different, but similar in its foundation of helplessness. The Trial, which is a book that I had heard a great deal about, but had never sat down to read, embraces all of that. Now, I still have never read the book. I will. But my introduction and my sole understanding of it is Orson Welles' 1962 adaptation. And I think it's really interesting that Orson Welles would be the one to bring Kafka to the screen. As far as I know, there's only two other adaptations. There's that short film for Liquid Television that was on MTV in the 90s. And there was Steven Soderbergh's Kafka, which I don't know if it was an adaptation. You've seen it. I haven't. I believe you've seen it. It was an adaptation of the life of Kafka. However, informed by the stories in the Penal Colony, Metamorphosis, The Trial, and a number of other things. It might be necessary for you to correct me on that, but that's what I remember.
I saw that on VHS, so there's that.
Yeah.
when we first started talking about this episode, I said, "Oh, I've seen a version of the trial with
Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons." Yeah, and you said, "No, that's Kafka," and I said, "Oh, fuck, okay."
I don't know.
So
I don't even know if he's playing Kafka or if he's playing K, or if it's I don't even know what the movie exactly is.
From what I remember, he's playing Kafka, and it's like it's basically he's being persecuted, and it's like I think it has like murder mystery elements, and I thought that was what this was.
Yeah.
Because I did the high school thumbing through Kafka as well.
Yeah.
And not to, I don't say that in a way that suggests that Kafka is for high school and then that's it. I just mean that like a lot of times these types of things are discovered at that time period. And it's a good time because it's you're learning what the fucking this bell means. You get up and move to go here. That bell means this. If you want to go this, you have to get the pass. If you want to get the pass, you have to go ask for it. You know what I mean? Like, and so you're already by high school, we're deep in bureaucratic fucking in the bureaucratic system. So why not discover it then? You know?
Well, I find it really interesting in that we are basically living in the Matrix, but the blue and the red pill are not pills per se. They're literature, they're movies, they're having that window opened up to at least be shown the exaggerated sense of what society is or will become. If you read 1984, if you read it 30, 40 years ago, or when it was published in what, the 50s? 1984 was published in the 1950s, right? Or the 40s.
I don't know if it was late 40s or 50s.
It seemed like it would be the end of World War II and the beginning of the Cold War. Not to say that it was anti-communist or it was specifically anti-communist, but it was because I think that's too simplistic a view. I think it attacks capitalism, communism, systems. I think it attacks religion to a degree. I think it attacks any kind of single-minded think, which is a hallmark of each governmental system, religious
Well,
system for that matter.
authoritarianism in general, yeah.
Yeah,
regardless of what the ideology behind it, whatever gets you there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Kafka doing the same. I mean, Kafka is like at a place in history in Europe, in Eastern Europe, where fascism and post World War One, where fascism and communism are starting to build more and more, and ultimately they're gonna. I mean, not way later, but like they're gonna culminate in World War Two. But all this stuff is happening. World War One, the Russian Revolution, all of that. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely go. I interrupted you, but yeah,
no. I mean,
critiques of authoritarian systems.
yeah. I mean, the man was 40 years old when he passed away in 1924. So he had just lived through the First World War. He was, German, Austrian, Hungarian. He was from Prague. He was Jewish, Austrian, Czech. He wrote in German. He was all of that factors into this idea of, I guess, Gestapo type techniques that I don't know if he see that I'm unfamiliar with the history, but it's almost as if the power of the imagery that he created has stayed with us and has either informed or defined the paranoia that we live in. I don't think he was writing about anything that was I don't think he was predicting. I think he was highlighting and maybe exaggerating in the sense of a dreamlike quality of the paranoia, which is something.
Dream or nightmare? Huh?
What's that?
I said, is it a dream or a nightmare?
That's the thing. You become. It's a nightmare, right? Absolutely. But what is the at least as far as I'm concerned, what is the most overpowering aspect of a dream or a nightmare? I believe it's the helplessness, the inability to control, to understand what's going on around you. And the trial is that. It's weird because the way Orson Welles directs this film, which, I mean, Welles, we could do a whole fucking month on just Welles and the trials and tribulations of his career as a filmmaker. The great successes, the monumental failures, and the ego versus the power of the studio system that would ultimately bring him down and make him almost a joke in some respects. I watched this film. I watched this film almost 65 years after it was released.
And 100 years after it's published.
That's true. That's a good point. It's a really good point. There's a part of you, if you're sensitive enough to the going-ons of the world, politics, social issues, and cultural experiences, you can't help but watch this film. I think, at least, you can't help but watch this film with a sense of how close are we to that. There are certain aspects of the film that are deliberate in both Kafka's writing and Orson Welles' adaptation, because Welles adapted the screenplay from the novel and directed the film and created this sense of faceless and law without reason. I mean, you watch this movie for 2 hours, and at no time do you know or understand why Joseph K. is being arrested.
Well, yeah, I mean, the premise is the main character wakes up in his home, and two men who don't identify themselves, they come into his home, and they basically tell him that he's under arrest. They won't tell him for what. He says, what are you here for? And it's like, you don't know? What do you mean? So you're denying it? Denying what? You are denying it. No, I'm not denying anything. So you admit it. I'm not admitting anything, so then you're denying it. And so it goes. The assumption is that he's guilty of something. We don't know what it is. He doesn't know what it is. So he has no recourse. And he gets sucked into this bureaucratic system. The thing is that he's not arrested and detained. He's allowed to go through this system where he goes to all these different gatekeepers, it's the legal system. And it's the labyrinth, right? And he never finds out. And ultimately, spoiler alert, he's executed. In true absurdist fashion. And why? And he's treated differently from the other people who are accused, who just accept their fate and grovel. He gets pissed and he's like, I haven't fucking done anything. And who knows what happens to the others, but it's happening to him. And he asserts that he is a member of society, but he's also a bureaucrat himself. And he's part of a larger, he's just one part of a big system. And there are multiple systems at play in society. That's how it is. It's not like we start to look at this movie and say like, oh, how close to we are that. We are that. We are at that place. People are being disappeared as we speak. There are people who are U.S. citizens in this country as we speak who have been deported. The idea of due process, the idea of habeas corpus, that you can, in the legal system, be utterly powerless, where, I mean, that's one of the main themes of the film. Civil rights is a fragile concept. And in the United States, we take those civil rights for granted. We take all of our rights for granted because we have this idea, or the founders had this idea, that rights were inherent, that they were God-given. But remember, they were God-given to certain people. And you had to be a full person, not a fraction of a person, or a slave, or a woman, or etc. And there's that. So what happens when officials, they don't identify themselves? You're arrested without charges. There's no habeas corpus, so you can't challenge your detention within the court system. There's no due process. What happens? The argument right now from right-wingers is to say, well, due process is for citizens. And even though legally the idea is that no person. So now are you saying that people who are here illegally, immigrants who they say are illegal aliens, are not people? Like, is it that? Second, like, whoever's listening to this, let's assume that you were born in the United States. To not even like dreamer, like the child of immigrants. Let's say your parents were born here, your grandparents were born here, you were born here, on both sides. Let's say you were born in Washington, D.C., you're born in the capital, boom, and you were born on the 4th of July, and you're born on 1976, the bicentennial. And you love apple pie and hot dogs and football and baseball and all that bullshit. And let's say you are tall and handsome and have blonde hair and blue eyes. All of that. And let's say, for whatever reason, you're arrested and they say, you're a fucking illegal. You're going to be deported. And you say, no, I'm an American. And they say, yeah, sure. And you're like, no, I'm an American citizen. Like, I was born here. Like, I have a social security number. I have a passport. I have a known traveler ID number. I have blah blah. I'm a teacher. I've had my fingerprints done. Like I teach high school. I blah blah. And they're like, yeah, that's what they all say. And off you go to El Salvador. And
all expense paid trip.
because
Always remember.
yeah, because one way. And there's fucking nothing you can do about it because there's no due process. And what happens if you are one of those ones that was saying, yeah, but due process is for only citizens? Well, you're only a citizen if they believe you're a citizen, and you're only a citizen if they allow you to prove it. What happens if you have your fucking passport in your pocket and you pull it out and say, look, and they tear it in front of you? What passport? You know what I mean? So we're there. When the Supreme Court says you have to bring this person back, yes, he's an immigrant, all this other shit. You have to bring him back because he's been deported illegally. And what happens when the government says, or that the executive branch of the government says no? The Supreme Court says this is illegal. We're saying that this is illegal. This is our judgment on this. We are one of the three branches of government. And then the executive branch says no. What are you going to do? Enforce your fucking judgment. You can't. You got nothing. We are there. That's where we are. And we've been in a version of that because on a bigger level, this idea of the trial is, that's the specific, like, that's the legal, that touches on the legal powerlessness. In general, this is about modernity itself. Like, this is much larger than just any one institution or any one government or any one governmental system. This is just the human being within modernity, which is to say, like, I can't think of his name right now. He was a teacher of philosophy, Texas. He had like this big lecture series. Rick Roderick, I think is his name. And he's like, modernity is fucking when you have to go pay your bills. Modernity is when you have to fucking stand in line. Modernity is the individual within bureaucratic institutions and systems, regardless of the form of government, regardless of the ideology of around which the government or around which the people like gather. Neoliberal capitalism, it's the corporation, the manager, the owner, the system. Communism, it's the bureaucrat replacing the owner, the state. Fascism, the corporation, the strongman, the nation, the race, all of that. The legal system, the healthcare system, the tax system, the studio system, if you're fucking any director. The Orson Welles of the world, the fucking Terry Gilliams of the world, they've shown us the pitfalls, the fucking hell, the fucking Scorsese's, you know what I mean? Like at this point, the educational system, any labyrinth that is about the logic of bureaucracy, the bureaucratic logic, they put you on hold. You have gatekeepers always having you wait behind this, wait behind that. They make you jump through hoops. You fall through the cracks. You get lost in the system. When they want something from you, they find you. When you want something or you need something because there's an error, you apply and then you wait. That's modernity. Charlie Chaplin's movie, Modern Times. What's the central image of Modern Times, that film? It's the fucking, what is it?
It's him on the it's either him on the conveyor belt trying to tighten those nuts, or him getting pulled into the machinery, and he's on
Exactly.
the cogs. Yeah, those two.
Exactly. He's the fucking little guy going through the gears of a machine. That's it. And in this film, at one point, there's in the this is the 60s, so there's a computer featured in the film, and it's a fucking like monstrous fucking like thing that like runs along the whole course of the hall. And it's like, well, you ask your questions, and it's like, well, yeah, it's the ultimately now we have the internet, and we have AI like language models or whatever, where you can ask questions and you get answers by a calculator. Um, that was supposed to save us from gatekeepers, that we could get info faster, we could self-publish if we wanted to, we could um, you can put your music out, you can make movies, you can fucking do this and that. And it's like, yeah, we can do those things. We can communicate with people more easily, we can learn without universities. But who owns these things? Who controls the algorithms? Who holds the keys? It's just the newest machine. And the machine is like the metaphor, right? The machine is the fucking metaphor of modernity. And that's another one of the themes. So it's the legal element, it's the institutional element, bureaucratic element. There's the existential element, where as a human being you're powerless because, well, first of all, you're not a fucking human being. Take a number. That's what you are. Take a number. Because you're a social security number, number one. You're basically your date of birth. You're your fucking address. You're your phone number. You're your account number. You're your fucking balance. You're your fucking amount due number. You're your employee number. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, that's what it is. It's what it is, because we don't live in a small society that's nomadic. Which even within those systems, it's kind of like, well, what is your agency as a human being when your options are dictated by any given system that you're born into? So cultural, socioeconomic, geographical, political. How much power do you have? That's the existentialist kind of like the struggle is like, well, how free can you be? Well, on some level, you're born free, because ultimately, like, you can kill yourself, so you have that choice. It kind of goes back to the battle royale. Like, what if you're put into this system? If you're put into this situation where you're in this kill or be killed environment, you have options. What are they? Again, like I said back then, it's like, well, you can kill, you can kill yourself to opt out, or you can try to basically hijack the game or short circuit the game. But your choices are ultimately always limited. The within that system, within that circumstance, is an existential absurdity, which is to say that what is the purpose? What's the meaning of life? Why are you here? Who controls even the language? If you're on your own, you're alienated. And your only option is to find meaning for yourself and live according to that meaning within the conditions that you find yourself in. That's it. This is the Kafkaesque universe. This is like parallel to Albert Camus, the stranger, or the rebel. Parallel to what Sartre was writing about. And if the assumption is that we're somehow always wrong or bad or by extension incomplete, then we can use fear, shame, guilt, and suspicion as a means of control and as a means of pitting one person against the other, so that it's like it becomes that fucking what's that song that they always play during Halloween time where and it has Michael Jackson singing the chorus. Sometimes I feel like there's somebody's
Rockwell.
watching me.
Somebody's watching me.
Rockwell. Yeah, exactly. It's that, and it doesn't have to be a surveillance state. All it has to be is the nosy ass neighbor who's like, Johnny didn't go to church today, or I heard someone in so and so's room last night, or I saw two shadows, I saw two silhouettes. That's all it takes. Religious institutions use this. Middle management uses this. Cops use this. Advertising, social media uses this. You're not good enough. It doesn't have to be you're guilty. It can also just be like you're not good enough. Self-help uses this. You're broken. Like, I can sell you a product that's going to help you become who you truly are or who you're supposed to be. Just buy my shit. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos, and we will tell you the truth of cinema. Everyone else is just going to sugarcoat it. We are teaching you guys the truth. Listen to us and only us. In that sense, everyone is accused, but exact or incomplete or something or diseased or, like there's this secret fucking belly fat melting method that no one knows about, but fucking now it's like they don't want you to know it, but I'm here to let you know, and I'm here on this YouTube commercial right in the middle of your favorite part of whatever the fuck you're watching. Mix baking soda with bullshit. Boom. If you've been in a car accident for blah, 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 call blah, blah, all of it. That's like the flip side of fucking the trial, which is like, not that you're condemned, but it's that, well, you haven't hit it big yet. So you're not even condemned. You're just poor. If you get rich, it's like that whole thing of like, I'm not ugly, I'm just poor. And they show you all these fucked up looking pictures of the Kardashian sisters, like made to look fucking worse than they like ever were. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So that they can look better than they ever were. Yeah. That's fucking the modern. And then it's like, well, what's the fucking answer? Like, what's the point, right? And Camus said like something along the lines of like that's the fundamental question: Do I have a cup of coffee or do I kill myself? And like obviously that sounds ridiculous, and obviously it's like, well, have the cup of coffee, asshole. You're gonna die anyway. Have the cup of coffee, live, but how? Like, do you live ethically as a stoic, like within the system, like accept your fate, but try to change what you can? Do you John Connor that shit where you're like, well, we're going to unionize, we're going to organize, and we're going to fight? Do you reject the system entirely and say, fuck that, I'm an outlaw, I'm a criminal, or I'm a revolutionary, but I'm going to try to bring the system down? Do you buy into it where you're like, no, I'm gonna fucking get promoted. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I'm a fucking like, I'm gonna be president one day. I'm gonna put on my fucking MAGA hat and I'm gonna fucking, or whatever. It doesn't have to be, that's one element, but it could be the opposite. And it can be like, no, I'm gonna fucking be the Joe Rogan of the left. Or I'm gonna be the fucking, I'm going to be the future of the Democratic Party, or I'm going to be this, or I'm going to be that, but I'm going to be the best at it. And I love the system. If I become the system, I can beat it. Or do you cynically game the system and find loopholes and just kind of cut corners, and you're just kind of like, hey, I'm going to have to wage like a guerrilla style war within the system and just kind of like get by however I can. And I'm going to have to play it smart. I'm going to work my wage. I'm going to cash my check. I'm going to do my shit outside of work. I'm going to do my shit outside of these systems and enjoy my life for what it is, like as best I can. And fuck the system, but I'm not going to fucking get my head cut off. I'm going to fucking lie low and gain whatever like momentum I can when I can. Joseph K is like, fuck your system, fuck your accusations against me. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm gonna go through these mazes and I'm gonna make out with all these strange chicks and I'm gonna get killed. And I don't know why, but that's what I'm gonna do. It's a fucked up movie. It's a beautifully fucked up movie.
So, is it a great film, or is it a great idea? It comes down to the execution. And as I watched the film again, this is one where I'm overwhelmed by what I'm seeing on screen. This is a beautiful film. This is about as beautiful a film as I've ever seen Welles direct. The camera angles, the lighting, the shadows, the way he plays with darkness, the way he uses forced perspective, or that old trick of repeated imagery. So not repeated imagery, but repeated objects in the scene. There's something about all of those people typing. Hundreds of people, what seems like hundreds of people in a room. To what point? For what reason? Why? It's overwhelming. Orson Welles has created an incredible look into an exaggerated sense of hopelessness in our lives. It's crazy because 1962, the movie is shot. Kafka's dead in 24, so he wrote it probably 1919, 2021, somewhere like that. And here we are, 2025, like you said, 100 years after the original novella, 60 some odd years after the film. What does this say to who we are as a culture? I look at that and I see the monotony and the soul, both the soul sucking and the soul starving aspects of corporate culture. It's a troubling film. Number one, because I think the majority of people who watch movies watch it with the sense of, what is this movie trying to say? And does it make sense? What he's trying to say.
If that. Versus like, oh, is it enjoyable?
Enjoyable,
first of all.
Well, this is not an enjoyable film in the standard traditional sense of, hey, let's go out on a Friday night, watch this and feel good about ourselves. That's not what this movie is. It's not what it was meant to be.
Right.
There was no, but it's a different kind of film. It's a thought-provoking, really, it forces your hand and it makes you recognize certain aspects of the culture that you don't want to admit to, things about your life that you don't want to accept, sometimes that you're not even aware of. I mean, how many, you and I have had this conversation in the past where I'll say to you, there'll be days at work when it's a Tuesday or it's a Thursday, and I don't know if it's Wednesday or Tuesday. I don't know what fucking day it is because the monotony of it, because how one day bleeds into the next, and all you're trying to do is get the end of it so that you can have those 2 days off. So you can get your head together and recharge your battery and feel alive again. The job takes it out of you. The job destroys your will. I've been overwhelmed and attracted to this idea, I guess, watching my dad work at a kind of monotonous, soul-sucking job. But then my original deep dive into Charles Bukowski with Post Office, Factotum, which I found kind of a kindred spirit with Kafka. The Metamorphosis itself kind of made sense to me in respect to losing yourself
Absolutely.
for that job. You know what I mean? Where everything takes over for you, and you're no longer who you are. You're no longer whatever you once believed yourself to be.
And you're not perceived.
Yes.
Sorry, hold that thought.
Please.
But also, like, to jump off of that is like you're not even perceived to be who you see yourself as. You're just seen as just this other lesser than object or creature than you're not at work. You're not fucking, oh shit, Rick has, forget the, oh, Rick has a podcast and Rick did stand up and Rick did theater and Rick lived in LA and Rick had all these hopes and dreams and Rick has, and then it's like Rick doesn't have fuck Rick's feelings. What? Rick doesn't have feelings. Rick doesn't have a brain. He just has a body.
Not
and
anymore,
whatever
yeah.
brain he has is to perform whatever his function is in this workplace, and that's what Rick is. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to make you feel a little bit better there.
I appreciate that. No, I mean, you have this idea of, this is a very difficult film because these are things that you don't want to admit about yourself, the culture, where we are going, where we've been. But how well does the film convey that idea? This is one of those films. Remember when we watched Wings of Desire?
Yeah.
And I told you I had never seen the film. You had seen the film. You knew the film. I had seen the remake.
I think I might have seen clips of it. I don't remember.
You don't remember? Oh, okay. Well, it's one of those films that it bleeds into the culture.
Yeah. Plus, it becomes, and I've had this this contradictory thing where it's kind of like I've seen it, or you think it. Look what happened with this. It was that Kafka film, but I thought it was the trial. So then, if you were to ask me before, oh, did you see the trial? I didn't see the Orson Welles one. I saw the one with what's his name, with Jeremy Irons.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, that's not the trial. That's called Kafka. And it's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it becomes this blur. And then it's like, well, I've seen clips, or did you see the whole film? Well, it's also like, if you don't see something repeatedly and you've only seen it, if you saw it in the 90s or the early 2000s, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe let's pretend you didn't see it. And let's say, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to start going with that because it's kind of like, maybe I saw it, but I don't remember. So Wings of Desire, I don't remember if I had seen it or not. I feel like maybe I had. And maybe I now have to go back and I want to hear if I said I had, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll become myself a liar, you know? The point is, Wings of Desire.
The point is, these films there are times when a film is life changing, and I know there's going to be a lot of people. Well, there are a lot of people that might listen to this and say, "Oh, you guys are being ridiculous. Movies are not that important. You make them out to be more than they are." I disagree. I think art is one of the most incredible um, gifts that we have as a culture, and I think you can pour yourself into. You can get lost into it badly, but you can also look at art as a spiritual fulfilling experience. The Trial is not a film that I would recommend to almost anybody. But it's a film that if I were sitting with somebody and they were saying, what are the film that's really made you think and it's really captured your psyche? I would say Orson Welles' The Trial, because regardless of the enjoyment of the experience, and I think you and I are kind of weird in the sense that we enjoy discomfort and forcing the hand. There's an aspect of me that enjoys that. It's not a traditional enjoyment, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
I mean, I think there is also like there is like a film snob element too. Like I know I have that where it's like
absolutely
like no, I want to watch the most fucking obscure, like hard to get through film. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, we have
there's a part of that.
We're gonna watch Showa eventually.
But it's also like I don't like it's different fucking times for different things. Like we know that.
Yeah.
And I think we've already filtered out in our audience. We filtered out the people who are like, "Oh, films aren't that serious." Because it's like, well, what's okay? What would that person use as an alternative? Like, well, they're probably gonna put some kind of bureaucratic fucking system in its place that has more importance. Which I mean, obviously, look, like your work is important because without your work, you can't survive.
Yeah.
So yes, it's of the utmost importance. But now the question of like fulfillment and the question of all that, like, and forget about the component of like, listen, like, because there is this element too, where it's like, we've also been sold this idea that we're supposed to love our job. You can have the perspective that says like, you don't need to love your fucking job. All you need to do is just show up and do it, and then you have your life outside the job. Your job is not your life. Your job is what you do to get money so that you can live. Because that's another perspective. And in that sense, sometimes the most monotonous, boring fucking like jobs, if you're working on some project outside of work, like a project, a labor of love or whatever you want to call it, by not having to use up all of your mental energy or physical energy at work, you can have all of that left over. So you can just, all you have to do is just basically do the bare minimum, basically, at work, and then give it your all outside of work. Obviously, the counter to that is like, yeah, but like, don't you want advancement? Don't you want this? And it's like, not necessarily, because if you're advancing outside. The flip side problem is that if it's too monotonous, then you're going to just feel like dead inside while you're there. And ultimately, you may lose utter, like, complete, total respect for fucking, like, whatever figures of authority are in that workplace, because you're kind of like, this is so fucking pointless, and you're pretending to be important, and, you know, we all know that story. It's Office Space, it's all those films. All right, but pulling back from all that, the the idea of a film that isn't entertaining but is thought provoking. I mean, I love that. I mean, and it is also entertaining because of it, because it's thought provoking, because you're saying, well, I'm not fucking Anthony Perkins about to be executed, but like maybe you have to fucking go to jury duty, and maybe you're just like, fuck, man, like it's dread. Um, or maybe what happens if that's trivial. What happens if you have like some kind of what happens if you're a veteran and you're somehow something happened with your uh your veterans benefits or something like that, that really fucking means something that isn't just inconvenient. That's like your shit. And now you have to go through this fucking all of this rigmarole to fucking get to try to get your benefits back. And what happens if you get sick, or what if you already are sick? And look at what our current government is doing with the administrative state. They're dismantling it. And then you see the flip side where it's like, well, we need bureaucracy on some level. We need these systems because what happens if there's a fucking tornado, I don't know where, and if there's no FEMA, how do these fucking people get help? What happens if there's fire? What happens if there's a storm? What happens if there's this? What happens if there's that? Well, someone needs to fucking, there needs to be a system in place that's done this before, and there needs to be a paper trail so that you can know, like, well, these people got help, these people haven't yet, so these people are next in line. So, like, you can, it's not just whatever you're watching on the screen. It's like, this shit is real. This shit all affects, it reflects and it affects. So, what we're talking about is of the utmost fucking importance, and it's of the utmost fucking relevance 100 years later after the fucking book, and however many years fucking later, 60 some odd years later after the movie. This shit is fucking real. We're all basically on trial somehow. We're all in some kind of labyrinth.
Yeah.
I think it's a fucking great film. It's not fucking like I had the best time. Is it depressing? I mean, is it more depressing than fucking what's not on screen? You know what I mean? Like,
that's the thing. Those are, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but those are childish questions, you know?
right.
It's like,
Uh,
let's deal with the reality of life and the monotony and the 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 feelings of purposelessness. But the K character, the Joseph K character, is in some ways it's interesting because a lot has been made of the interpretation of Kafka's original novel and Orson Welles' adaptation. I think
mhm.
a lot of people have said that the Joseph K character is a victim. Um, the story is during the filming of this movie, during the actual shooting of this film, Anthony Perkins, a few days into it, finally went up to Orson Welles and said, "Do you think it can be interpreted that Joseph K is guilty?" And Orson Welles screamed at him, "Of course he's guilty.
Oh,
He's
nice.
guilty," which adds another layer to it. It's like, what is he guilty of? What does he do? Is he selling out to a system and perpetuating a soullessness, a mindlessness? Is he adding to the corporate um, the corporate slavery mentality? is he allowing himself to be subjugated and subjugating others? Because he's not, if you remember in the film, his desk is not one among the hundreds of typewriters and desks are on that floor. He's on a platform above it.
Well,
He's the overseer, right? So
I touched on this, and he says it at some point. He's like, sometimes it takes people weeks to get to see me.
yeah,
So yeah, he's part of it. But I mean, initially when you just told me this right now, well, I mean, two things. Now that based on what you said, I feel like there's also an element of like, well, he's guilty because we're all in the system somehow guilty. Of what? Well, of just being part of the system, and just running the system implies, I mean, without even thinking of in terms of guilt, it just like we're all part of that system, of the system. I talked about this like however many episodes ago. It's like, well, we're all wearing fucking some version of sweatshop something, or using some version of sweatshop something.
sure.
You know what I mean? And so like we are part of the system, the chain of fucking supply and demand that that is by definition exploitation and exploitative. And so, and not everyone's exploitation is the same. But like that's, I mean, in that sense, well, is there blood on everyone's hands? Sure. But another, when you initially just right now just told me the story that Anthony Perkins goes up to Orson Welles and asks him that question, my first take was like, well, forget Anthony Hopkins, forget Anthony Perkins and Orson Welles. An actor goes to his director and is asking him a question about the character. Now, the director, my first knee-jerk reaction was that like it was a form of directorial manipulation on the part of Orson Welles to embody like a metaphor of the system itself. And just as because Orson Welles is in the film, he directs the film, but he's also in the film. And so he's this power figure, the advocate in the film, who is counter to fucking Anthony Perkins' character, Kay. So to scream at him as the director and say like, of course he's guilty, it doesn't necessarily, all this is I'm hearing as you told me that story, because I'm like, oh, that's fucking cool. The reason why I'm thinking it could potentially be cool is that he did that to get a response out of Anthony Perkins, because Anthony Perkins doesn't have to fucking believe whatever his director tells him.
Yeah.
Anthony Perkins can be like, well, Anthony Perkins can be like, fuck you, he's not guilty. I'm not fucking portraying him that way. And like, no, he's not fucking guilty. Because it would have been there could be a different outcome if Orson Welles says, no, he's not guilty. These are the reasons why he's not guilty. So I want you to play it. And you can approach it very intellectually and very like this, versus like screaming at him and saying, of course he's guilty. That can get a defensiveness if this is your character and you're like all attached to it and you're all this and that, like Anthony Perkins could push back. And you very much see that in the performance. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that I see that as a metaphor in action for the system, where it's like, I'm the fucking director. I fucking say, I'm not even going to just tell you, I'm going to scream at you and tell you what it is. And I'm also Orson Welles, and this is to be expected, and we understand the lies agreed upon, you know?
Yeah.
And so at this point, Anthony Perkins can he can either play it and he's playing it as if he actually is guilty and he knows what he's guilty of, but no one knows except for him as his own, using his own motivations, but pretending to not be guilty, but knowing that he is, or else he can go with it and say, "Fuck you, I'm not guilty," even if the director thinks that he's fucking guilty, even if the director thinks that fucking Decker is a replicant,
I
and
was
now
just
we're in
about to
Blade
bring
Runner
that
time.
up. I was just about to bring that up. It was like
Right. Yeah.
probably the most famous case of a star and a director having 180-degree difference between their interpretation of the character, which is basically to say, not even an interpretation, but it's like, is Deckard a replicant? You ask Harrison Ford, he'll say no. You ask Ridley Scott, he finally says yes. But wouldn't it make sense that Harrison Ford, if he didn't know he was a replicant, would say, no, he wasn't a replicant. He played him as a human.
Exactly.
Oh, beautiful.
Exactly.
Fucking beautiful. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it adds another layer, um, because Orson Welles has been the advocate and K in his career,
Yes. Well, that's the thing.
and
Look at Orson Welles. This is a man who was put into movie exile after making arguably one of the greatest films of all time, and everything subsequently made was either chopped up and destroyed, or was unrealized, or was left in shambles. The Magnificent Ambersons. This is it. No, not this is it. What was a? It's all true. It's all true. Um, the man spent almost fucking 20 years trying to make Don Quixote. The man, he says this is his best film, but he says also it was the only film that it was his from beginning to end. What you see on the screen is what he intended. He said maybe Chimes of Midnight later on, but it was, think of all the films that were destroyed. Touch of Evil, even the version that we have now, which is considered the director's cut, is a rebuilding based on something like a 27-page handwritten letter about what was wrong in the original screening of the film. But the fact is that it was never made clear what Orson Welles' crimes actually were. Was it the fact that he took on William Randolph Hearst and insulted him to such a degree that his career would never be the same? Was it the audacity of thinking that he could be, that he should be recognized as the genius he was in Hollywood? Was it the women? I don't know. He is K. There is no but. In the same way, and I thought this was really interesting, Anthony Perkins doesn't play this part as if, tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what I did wrong. I did nothing wrong. Tell me what I did. There's no level of desperation there. It's almost as if being accused of something is standard fare in this society, in this culture that is being depicted. So
yeah,
everybody is guilty at all
right,
times. And
exactly,
yeah, and I guess Orson Welles is guilty as an artist at number one, because he is an artist. One of the ugliest words that you can use in reference to cinema. It's a business. It's Hollywood. It's about making money. There is absolutely no room for art or artistry. Look at the names of all those who were eaten up by a system that whatever genius they had was not going to be allowed to flourish. Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, Jackie Chan to a degree, John Woo. any number of foreign directors that came over here and couldn't adapt their visions to, we herald Billy Wilder, great filmmaker, but somehow able to work within the system.
Right.
What about Eric von Stroheim?
Right.
Admittedly, a prick, but that doesn't mean not a great artist. Orson Welles
Yeah.
was an incredible filmmaker. On the power of Citizen Kane alone and the imagery that was achieved in Magnificent Amberson's The Lady from Shanghai, Touch of Evil. As shitty as it is to watch Charlton Heston play a Mexican for almost 2 hours, it's a brilliant film. It's a
Right.
brilliant film. But
And
yeah,
now as you're also getting closer and closer, more and more adjacent to fucking McCarthyism in Hollywood as well.
well, this would have been right after McCarthyism.
Right. That because you're naming names, and then I'm thinking about you naming names, and I'm thinking about fucking naming names, and I'm like, fuck, like the House Un-American Activities Committee.
Yeah.
We're all guilty. You know what I mean? Like, prove that you're not a fucking communist. Well, how do I prove that I'm not a communist?
In the same way you prove you're not a witch.
Exactly. You better fucking.
You better drown, bitch. You better drown. That's how we know. That's how we will fucking know. If your ass drowns, then we'll know.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely. This is fucked up. This is, and how is it that certain people were able to function within the system while they gave up names?
Yeah.
Elia Kazan,
Yeah.
So this is much deeper when you look beyond just what's in front of you. And I was watching this, and at a certain point, I'm thinking, okay, this is fucking early '60s, and I'm thinking, what would it have been like? And I started to play this game, and I was like, had it been fucking Jimmy Stewart?
Oh wow!
Instead of Anthony Perkins,
Jimmy Stewart or Henry Fonda? Really? You could interchange
Henry
those
Fonda
two
or
at that
Gregory
time.
Peck?
Yeah.
I thought of Henry Fonda too. I don't know what would Henry Fonda. What was the film that came out around this time that was Henry Fonda?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he was doing a lot of westerns at that time. In '62. God, I don't know. Was he doing a couple of John Ford films at that point?
I don't know. I mean, like, because I'm thinking Gregory Peck, it's fucking To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same year. Jimmy Stewart, I think, is it's around the time of Liberty Valance, I think.
Yeah.
And so, like, what qualities would they have brought to it? I think, like, Gregory Peck would have brought a certain kind of, like, dignity to it. But there's something about Anthony Perkins that Jimmy Stewart, he has that, he's been, like, pegged as having that fucking, like, everyman, all-American quality, which, for a good reason,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But there's something about Anthony Perkins that's just kind of like, there's like an arrogance there.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, please finish what you were going to say, and then
there's an arrogance there that that I feel like is needed to preserve the character. That's needed to get the character all the way to the end, so that the character can at least die with some level of Like I think Gregory Peck, I think would have had dignity throughout, and I think he would have like really like tried to make his case type of thing, or I can in my imagination, right?
I think Gregory Peck was too grand for this type of film. Too large a
Sure,
figure.
yeah,
Too. Um, it, it he wouldn't have been. He's a different kind of everyman. He's a noble everyman.
right,
He's not
noble,
this.
exactly.
Yeah, which is not this case. Which is not. This is. I mean, you could easily slip Jonathan Pryce from Brazil into this film.
Oh
In
yeah,
fact, so much of Brazil is this film. I'd find it difficult to imagine that Terry Gilliam wasn't affected by this film. A lot of the look, the, Brazil is almost a comic take on this. In fact, it really is kind of a comic take.
I mean, so much of well, even I mean that's a direct. You can see a direct link, but I mean, like
Mhm.
the Matrix
Yeah,
is this fucking Edward Norton from Fight Club is a parallel on some level because it's kind of like you're in this world that is bullshit,
yeah, I can see
but
that.
you're still subject to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And and in that sense, Tyler Durden is the one who throws the fucking bundle of dynamite. Um, at the end, that's ultimately how Kay dies. Is that the absurdity of it is that his executioners won't even take enough fucking responsibility to do the deed. So they pass the knife back and forth between themselves and ultimately give it to him. And he won't do it. He's like, you fucking do it. And then they just fucking escape and leave him down in the fucking pit and they throw the dynamite down. He picks it up and tries to throw it back and blows up. Um, we just saw Leslie and I with some friends just saw the other day this opera at this opera about Garcia Lorca, the Spanish poet who was um, executed during the Spanish Civil War, and you know
Did they ever
similar shit.
actually execute him, or did he just turn up missing?
They, I mean, basically both.
Well, the idea
But
is roadside, right? He was killed on a roadside. They shot him in the back of the head, but there
yeah, I
might
don't know
not
if
be
it was in a
proof.
mass. I don't know if it was a mass grave or the road or the side of the road,
Hmm.
or the point is that
Yeah.
he was executed under Franco in under the fascist regime. Homosexual poet, contemporary of Dali, from Spain, and it was just like fuck. It was another one of those where he dies in 36, so almost 100 years ago, um, and here we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Here we are.
Here we fucking are, and
That could be the coda on a lot of our discussions. Here we are, and
yeah, I mean,
it's frightening because we don't learn from the lessons of art. We don't learn from the past. We don't learn from everything that is told to us. We're like, oh no, we're so above that we're not. That doesn't pertain to us, which is bullshit. You need to be aware of you know cultural experience. You need to be aware of what goes on in the world and how easy it is for people in power to abuse that power. Everything that's going on, you can see. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a bad filmmaker to come out on this thing with some asshole and a chainsaw just starting to, cut up desks and shit in this world that's there. It's we're not so far off from where we've always been. Advancements have been made, but fundamentally, the rich are still rich. The rich are still getting richer. And the rest of us are just trying to survive it. That's a frightening thing about this film, is that how prescient it is, how it's able to look at the world that we live in. And I mean, think about it. Kafka was Austrian, Hungarian, wrote in German, lived in Prague, Jewish. Orson Welles is a Midwestern filmmaker. Well, a filmmaker from the Midwest, American. Shit, there's a 35-year span between the writing of this original idea and the filming of it. Everything that occurs in the movie in 1962 was seen in 1924 when Kafka died. And here we are in 2025, 100 years later, and what has changed? Where are we? How have we not understood and gained from the knowledge of the past? Because it's easy to forget the past. If it hasn't happened within my lifetime and it hasn't happened to me, why should it matter?
Well, even like there's the idea of what we don't know about the past, or those who aren't familiar, right?
Yeah.
But there's also like what happens. And this is very like Milch, like David Milch's shit. It's like which goes all the way, like this. If you go back to just go to industrialization to begin with, and the Wild West, the Industrial Revolution, like it, like it doesn't matter if you know about history. The problem is that like you're stuck in history, and if we and like your part, you and I and everyone else is the human condition is to be born in the human condition. And you're born in a time, you're born in a place, and we are very limited by the circumstances because it's all network effects, and it's all historical effects. And if the idea is that history, if we think of it like as this, like as Marx did, as this like back and forth argument or dialectic, where you have a thesis and a counter and then a synthesis, and so you go back and forth, and that's how history, like if we think of it in that sense as this linear thing that's like progressing, you're still within the history itself, within that so-called evolution, so that when you counter, you're still within. It's like, for example, a Satanist is still using the symbols of Christianity to counter Christianity, and you're still caught up in that thing. So there is a sense of like modern powerlessness, but like we talk about the Unabomber. Ted Kaczynski's like, we need to dismantle the industrial system. Okay, so what? But what are we gonna do? Like, we're gonna go back to what? Like, we're gonna go back to fucking before, to mercantilism, and then what? And then feudalism. Like, what are we gonna do? How do you do that? What's are we gonna end up? Are we gonna be like? Is it gonna be Mad Max? because we're not going back to nomadic fucking tribal societies. And then ultimately, like, what is it? Does it become that? Does it become The Walking Dead? And it's like these little communities of run by warlords, or some are fucking egalitarian, some are whatever. But then, what? Even the people who followed Marx himself, who had these counters to the system that said, well, we're going to do this, their fucking, the alternatives that they tried fucking went horribly wrong. Whether by cynicism or, by power grabs, which obviously that happened, or because it's not like, I mean, there have been multiple interpretations and figures who interpreted Marx's work in different ways, but ultimately, like, it wasn't like the workers had fucking control of the means of production. The bureaucrats replaced the owners. I know the fucking, like, their version of fucking state capitalism called communism was fucking, boom, here's this. And then on the other side is fucking the fascists. And I mean, like, Milch was like, well, I'm going to write about cops in Rome and how fucked up that was, and how, you know what I mean? Like, you can take it back to as far as you want, but he was like, well, I'll trade out Rome for the Wild West. And what happens when you're trying to create this society? But then what, the whole thing about that the antagonist who comes in with the mining and all that, and how do you try to reverse this course when it's so much larger than one person? I don't know. Like, it's, you can know all the history, but you can't change history, and you can't change, like, you can only change the trajectory so much. So even if we were to shift the paradigm, there are still going to be unintended consequences of that shift that contain within that shift will contain within itself elements of what existed before it shifted, because it's still on its course. It just now changed, So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, obviously, no one fucking knows. But trade out modernity with anything else, and you're still a person who is not completely in control of your own fucking life, because human beings can't exist alone. And so it's, if you get rid of, like, the idea of, culturally we value individualism. In cultures that don't put individualism on such a high level, there is still an element of, like, well, yeah, I want to fucking, like, I'm not only thinking of myself, I'm thinking of the group, but I do, like, want to have, like, some kind of movement and agency as a member of this tribe, as a member of this group. But, like, on some level, are you still a servant? Are you a servant to groupthink, or are you a servant to individualism? Because you can still be a servant to individualism, because now you have all these expectations of where you're supposed to be as this all-powerful so-called individual, but now you have to face the reality that your actual power is limited because you aren't the last man or woman, human being on Earth, and you can't do everything by yourself. So if you are there to save the world and the fucking people who are going to help you show up late, well, you're fucked, And it's like, where the fuck were you? We're saving the world while I was caught in traffic. Like, what do you want me to do? My car didn't start. I couldn't find my phone. I couldn't find my shoe. Like, how can I save the world without my phone?
Right.
I couldn't find my charger. I didn't have service. I tried texting you, but like it didn't go through. Like, that's absurd, but it's fucking that's what it is. And it's like, hey, can we save the world tomorrow? Something came up. Sorry.
It's fascinating. It really is. When you can watch a film, and the film can make you reevaluate life or reinforce certain beliefs or just open you up to ideas that you didn't know were there. This is an incredible film. I think it's an incredible film. But it's one that I'm going to have to go back to because it's not as simple as watching it, taking it in, and understanding it completely. I mean, the more challenging a film is, the more times you have to watch it.
Yeah.
I understand the idea. I understand what's being said. But I'm not always sure how it's affecting me. And I think one of the things that I was, we do a lot of movies here. We do a lot of directors. We place bets because we know certain films are going to be an interesting discussion. We know certain directors are going to deliver. And sometimes those are films that we are familiar with. Some of them we're intimately familiar with that have stayed with us for years. But this new thing that we're doing right now, is a series of films that neither you or I have seen. You had never seen this film. I had never seen this film. All we knew that it was Kafka and it was Orson Welles. That was enough to say there's a good chance that this might be great, good, or a colossal failure. I'm voting for great, and I'm looking to go back to see how it'll affect me again next week, next year, 10 years from now, because it's going to be interesting to also view it through the lens of a changing culture and society. I've written up a list of films that I want to see that I've never had a chance, and that have either slipped through the cracks or I've never made time for. You've read that list. You've added to that list. This was a film that was on your list. I was really shocked that you had never seen it.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, once we sorted out that I hadn't seen it, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I had just seen the documentary, like in my own life.
Yeah. Your own Earl Morris experience. Yeah. Facing that in Terratron, trying to understand, what am I guilty of? Yes.
Yeah, it was like, little did I know that I was guilty of my resume,
Yeah.
Yeah, the Interrotron won't hire me because it's me, that's it. Like, that's what it is. And we're in the fucking the large halls of fucking dehumanizing fucking modernity, but in there, amongst the alienation, the fucking powerlessness, the anonymity, the sterility, the dehumanization, the disorientation of all those angles and shadows and noir shit, and there is cinema, and there are those things that, like, there are the cups of coffee, there are the romance of fucking neon lights, of fucking, like, the reflection of traffic lights in puddles, in rain, and fucking low music, loud music, fucking that one person, whoever that is, ramen, fucking whatever. There are still moments in our lives that have meaning. Those are fill in the blanks for everyone. So fill in those blanks, because otherwise you are guilty. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. This one goes to Robert. Thank you for your contribution. Thank all of you. You're all guilty. We're guilty. We own it. We watch it. We live it. Goodbye.